What is up, everyone? My name is Michael Pohl with BayAreaAquatics.com, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about a semi-stressful situation I had at the beginning of the week where my air conditioning decided to fail on the hottest day it's been all year. So it was 105 degrees Fahrenheit for me. So on Sunday night, my air conditioning unit decided to just stop working. We had an air conditioning guy come out and check it the next day, and it was basically the motor on both the fan and the cooling. I forget the name of it, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the cooling part of it both went out at once. The unit's about 20 years old. It was kind of on its last legs. We had been replacing fuses constantly anyways, so we knew it was happening soon. It just happened to be on the day that it was 105 degrees. So my house, in return, got up to about 95 to 100 degrees in the middle of the day for 2 days or so. Normally that's not too big of a deal. I have a commercial location for my work that I can just that I own, that I can just kind of go and run the air conditioning. I could take my whole family if I wanted to and watch movies, eat, whatever, and be fine there. But this is the first time that I've had something like this happen where I have fish tanks. The tank behind me, I hadn't even thought about the fish tanks until some of the fish started kind of hanging out up by the surface a little bit, and I decided, oh, you know what, I should probably check the temperature of the tanks. This tank was almost 90 degrees water temp by the time I thought about it. And so I checked all the other tanks. The shrimp tank was 93, 92, something like that. The beta tank was up in the low 90s, and the pea puffer tank was sitting actually in the high 80s. And I kind of freaked out for a minute. I was like, holy crap, I didn't think they would swish or swing that much. My pond outside was only sitting at like 78 degrees, right? And that was in the middle of the day with the sun shining on it for hours. It wasn't heating the pond up very much. And so I was like, I wasn't expecting the aquariums to get that hot, and they got super, super hot. So I figured I would go over the way that I cooled the aquariums down to a manageable level, and how you could cool them down, and a couple of other things that I didn't do, but you know, some people could do. So the very first thing that I did was I have glass hoods on all of my aquariums, mainly because I have cats, I've got kids in the house, I've got things like that, and people like to spray Febreze and all sorts of stuff, and I just don't want any of that in. So all of my tanks have very tight fitting glass hoods. First thing I did was I took those glass hoods off, I popped them open, whatever it was. Even on the beta tank, I was a little concerned because I know beta are jumping fish. Mine's never been a jumper. He had no lid for a while, but went ahead and opened the lid on his anyways, and just kept a close eye on it. If you have something like egg crate, you could switch to like an egg crate lid. That's another reason why I don't do egg crate, is again, it kind of gets rid of the lid. But if you don't mind not having a lid, you can do egg crate, and that way in a situation like this, you don't have to worry about lifting your glass lids. If you've got a plastic hood or something like that, pulling that off, even if it's not very tight fitting, will still let a lot of the heat transfer. So I definitely recommend doing that if heat's a concern. That's one of the first things you can do unless you absolutely just cannot do that. The next thing that I did was I set up surface agitation. And so agitating the surface helps that heat transfer and helps, let all that heat and coldness, I don't even know what the technical term is, but transfer. And so I hooked up a couple of the Aquarium Co-op Nano USB pumps on most of my 10-gallon tanks. Have sponge filters on them, so they were already running surface agitation. The 75 has a sponge filter in this corner, but I went ahead and set up a second one. It's still going right now because I'm medicating this tank, and so I've got the heat up and all the medication in that because of the fish that's in the breeder box there. But yeah, so I've still got it running just because I want the oxygen there. And that's the other thing to keep in mind, is when your tank temperature rises, it lets the oxygen in the water go way, way down. And so depending on your load, you may need to agitate the surface of your water just because of oxygen, not even necessarily to bring the heat down. So that's definitely one of the first steps that I would do. It's one of the first steps that I did do. The next thing that I did was I went and got a fan out of my garage, and I set it up. I didn't have enough to put one on each tank. I didn't have like clip-on fans, but putting a fan across the surface of the water, you're gonna get a lot of water evaporation, but it's gonna drop the tank temperature significantly. Just the fan alone in a couple hours dropped the tanks like 5 or 6 degrees. And so that helped a lot with keeping it at kind of a manageable level. And then I only had to resort to drastic measures when the tank, or right in the middle of the day when the ambient temps got to be like 100 degrees. So even if you don't have a fan for each tank, setting up a fan roughly in that direction, preferably higher than the tank, pointed down, so it kind of hits that surface of the tank even just a little bit, it's gonna help. Again, you're gonna get more and more evaporation. You might have some slight humidity problems, but for a day or two, not a big deal. If you're gonna do that full time, then keep in mind that is gonna up your humidity quite a bit, but for a day or two, not that big of a deal. You should be okay. Another thing you can do is turning off your lights. So I run LED light bars. They do get a little bit hot, but not too crazy. Not even hot to the touch per se, so I didn't worry about turning it off. But if you're running like old light bulbs or fluorescent lights or anything like that, those generate heat. Turn those off, right? Turn those off, get the heat off of there. If your ambient room is running a lot of lights, turn most of them off. If you've got it up next to a window, close the blinds so the sun's not hitting the tank and heating it up. Put cardboard in between it, whatever you gotta do, get as much light off of that tank as possible. That'll help keep the water temperature down and keep it from heating up from the non-ambient temperature. Now another thing you can do, and this is really, really common, is you can float bottles of water that are frozen. So bottles of ice basically, or ice packs, things like that. Don't dump ice cubes directly into the tank just because you're probably not dechlorinating that water. A frozen water bottle, you're not gonna have to worry about any sort of chlorine or anything getting into it because everything's trapped inside. Ice pack, same situation, but I wouldn't dump ice cubes into the tank directly. One, it's hard to scoop them out if the temperature gets too bad. With this, I have to literally sit here and watch the temperature as I do the ice cubes because I don't want it to drop too much. And then if it starts to drop too quick, I can pull them out, throw them back in the freezer or whatever. If my power is not out, which it wasn't in this case, that's not a big deal. And so that's what I would do if if it started to raise really quickly, I would just throw some ice in there, or ice packs, ice frozen water bottles, and do it that way. And last but not least, this is one that I didn't do. Talking to people, it's really common to do with ponds, but for aquariums, I don't know, I go back and forth on it, and it's to water change. And so you've got to be careful with this one, but I know several people that'll change water with a 2 or 3 degree difference and do like a 10 to 25% water change every couple of hours. And that kind of helps keep the temperature from rising, or if it gets too high, you can kind of lower it. You want to be careful with that because you can still shock your fish just like you can with the ice and things like that. So that one I didn't do this last couple of days, but it is an option there. If it was something like a week long, I probably would have done a little more often, but just take caution with that one. Water changing is a way to bring the temperature down, but again, just be cautious. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, this video is kind of super unorganized. It's Sunday night. It's just been a busy week, and it was probably the last thing that I wanted to happen was my air conditioning to go out, because I just didn't feel like having to babysit tanks that much. But it was definitely an interesting experience for me. I hope no one else has to go through it, but that's kind of how I kept it. Oh, as far as tank temperature, I didn't even talk about that. Like I said, my tanks were getting up to like 90. My goal was to keep them below 90 or 86. If I could keep them stably at like 85, 86, that was what I did. And that's what I did for most of it. My shrimp tank, I floated ice in it a lot more since I was home. I was off of work. It wasn't that big, or wasn't off of work, but working from home that day. I could monitor it a lot more. So I slowly brought the temp down to about 80 on the shrimp tank and kept it at 80. Just because I know they tend to like colder water. My shrimp are kept at 78 because that's where my house is kept. But I don't know, for some reason I just felt like they would do better in a colder one, and it's only a 10-gallon tank, so the temperature could go down a little quicker and stay down. It was easier to keep down, so that's what I did because I had the time and the attention span. But yeah, I kept all the rest of the tanks at 85, 86 degrees. Over the course of the 2 days, like I said, my air conditioning went out Sunday night, which wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that hot yet, but Monday, again, it got up to 105, and then that Tuesday, it got up to about 102, and our AC was fixed about 4 p.m. Tuesday, and so we kicked the AC on the second it came on and dropped down to, I think, 80s or so in our house by like 8, 9 o'clock at night. It was only getting to like 85 degrees at night here, 80, 85. And so even leaving the windows open and stuff, you're still barely keeping the tank temps down. It just wasn't working. And yeah, I think I am rambling on, but that's just kind of my explanation on why this week's video is kind of random. I've just been stressed. I'm dealing with, like I said, this one platy's not doing too well. I think it's a swim bladder issue, but I'm not good at that type of stuff. So I'm medicating this whole tank because not all the fish have been through medication before, including that platy. So I just figured he's not the first platy I've lost in the last few weeks. So I figured whatever, I'm gonna go ahead and just medicate the whole tank. And then I'm just watching him because he's having trouble swimming. But so I've been dealing with that. I've been dealing with work, like I said, and then the heat issue. But hopefully this week should be a little bit slower. Hopefully I'll have some time to do some more YouTube videos for you guys. If you haven't been able to tell, I did some stuff to the 75 gallon as far as plants. There's no more plastic plants in here. And I've got some rock stuff coming on the way for this and some awesome good stuff. And I've got a list of videos that I want to film. So I'm going to try and get some content out, hopefully at the end of this week, and then start putting out maybe 2 or 3 videos a week for the next couple of weeks, especially with the summertime. I'm a lot more free. But yeah, and for those of you that have listened to me ramble enough, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. If you haven't already, you know, Bay Area Aquatics t-shirts. This is actually one of the new ones. It's got the big logo on the back. That's a horrible angle, but big logo on the back, little logo on the front. They are for sale at the link down below in the description. I've also got one with the big logo on the front. Every time you buy one, it supports the channel, both as sharing the channel whenever you wear it, and 2, helps me pay for all the cool videos and things like that. I've also got my Patreon, link down in the description below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and listen to me ramble and ramble and ramble. I know my videos are way too long. If you do subscribe, hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you had problems with heat before, let me know how you kept your aquariums cool down in the comments below. If you didn't like the video, you know what to do. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.